Hi, good morning. My name is Richard Roberts. I'm the leader of Hertfordshire County Council, and until very recently, I was the cabinet lead for adult social care. So I've been intimately involved in the pandemic since last February, when Director Ian McBeath and later Chris Badger guided us so much of the response. I'd like to start by welcoming you all to what I know is going to be a really insightful annual conference. I've opened and compared more than one volunteering conference in Hertfordshire, and I just miss not seeing you all, greeting long-time acquaintances, and finding out firsthand what's happening. However, all is not lost. I'm delighted to be with you this morning. I have to say, I've had just about enough of virtual reality, although with Teams and Zoom, we've all been able to continue vital work. And we will look back and know that our working and social lives have possibly changed forever. Before and after pandemic may feel very, very different. But today is an excellent opportunity to celebrate the resilience and responsiveness of our voluntary community and social enterprise organisations during what has been an extremely challenging year. Team Hearts volunteering has been a critical element in building a strong culture of volunteering across the county. This established culture and infrastructure meant that we were in a strong position when the virus hit, enabling the voluntary sector to demonstrate incredible responsiveness and flexibility throughout the pandemic. Team Hearts volunteering was central to our ability to recruit the surge of new volunteers and allocate them to suitable roles. These included community groups doing shopping and collecting prescriptions, mobilising volunteers to pack food parcels for Operation Shield, charities moving all their vital services online, gift bag packing and delivery, Communities First coordinating the vaccine centre volunteering, and that's going on to this day, and coordinated vaccine, and the community cohesion that was demonstrated by the introduction of COVID-19 mutual aid groups and village larders. I saw the work of the volunteers myself just before Christmas when I helped to pack gift bags with an organisation called Small Acts of Kindness, and well done to you. I know that the people who received the packs who had felt isolated are incredibly appreciative that somebody was thinking of them. To me, this showed that support for mental well-being is just as important as practical measures and played a key role in the work that has been carried out. We loved the work so much that we supported another round of gifts at Easter, or we supported Kind Acts of Giving. As the first peak was subsiding, I popped into Mundell's and met the volunteer teams and support staff who've been so instrumental in keeping the supply lines going for our shielded residents who needed food parcels. Great work, guys. I think at peak, volunteers were pretty much keeping up to 6,000 residents afloat with food parcels, dog walking, social calls, and just about anything that needed doing. Absolutely brilliant, exemplary support from Team Hearts volunteers. I think in the end, some 130,000 food parcels were delivered from initial standing start with no organisation. Many of you will know Christy Thacker and her team from the County Wellbeing Unit. And very early on, she said to me that the voluntary sector is responding with speed and effectiveness that has to be supported. I can assure you that she had my full support to do whatever was needed to keep that momentum going. And in the budget we just had in February, I put plans in place to build on your strengths to enable more of the same, but to also help with coordination, sharing data, intel, etc., so that ultimately you guys can get as much done as possible. The increased partnership working between organisations within the Hertfordshire voluntary sector has strengthened relationships, thereby increasing the positive impact and, more importantly, outcomes for residents. The partnership with Community Help Hertfordshire has meant that in the last year, tens of thousands of volunteer tasks have been completed and nearly 4,000 COVID volunteers remain available across the county. I'd love to thank each and every one of you individually if I could. Volunteers recruited through Team Hearts volunteering are now supporting people to come out of virtual isolation and get moving again. I'm sure that they will continue to be vital as we progress on our journey to recovery. By late last year, more than 70,000 people were recommended to be shielding, a huge number needing support in so many different ways. I note that other speakers today will encourage organisations to look to the future and to build on the wonderful volunteering legacy that the pandemic has created. I know that the County Council recognises the amazing response of the sector. I'd like to finish by introducing the Team Hearts Volunteer Celebration film, which features some brilliant examples which champion volunteering in our county. The film also expresses our thanks to all volunteers across Hertfordshire, new and old. Thank you so much for what you've been doing, continue to do, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.
It's a really good feeling when you've done something nice for somebody.
It's a great way of meeting new people and I think building up confidence.
You get a huge amount of enjoyment knowing it's going to help another individual or another family.
Hi, I'm Katie, Team Hearts Volunteering Project Manager. Team Hearts Volunteering is a one-stop hub for all things volunteering across Hertfordshire. At Team Hearts Volunteering, we are funded by Herts County Council and we work in collaboration with many other voluntary organisations across the county. This video is a celebration of all the incredible volunteers, new and old, across Hertfordshire and all of the voluntary organisations that they support. Thank you so much for all of your help and we hope you enjoy this video.
My name's Taz.
And my name's Jackie, and we're volunteers for W3RT. We've been volunteering for approximately 2 years. It's just been a pleasure during lockdown.
We go out and do community car runs, which means taking people to doctor's appointments or hospital appointments when they've got no one else to help. We also pick up prescriptions for people, which Jackie does for us.
And normally Taz will drive me to a pharmacy. I'll get out, pick up the prescription, and then we go to the person's house and then we'll deliver at their doorstep. We decided to start volunteering because we've both retired. I retired first and we decided that prescription runs were something that we could do together. So I think volunteering for the community is very, very important. There's a lot of people that need help that may not even ask for it, but now that they know that this service is available, we can be the ones that's their lifeline.
My name's Kathy. I've been volunteering at Digswell Place Riding for the Disabled for 8, nearly 9 years now. I wanted to volunteer as well, to put something back into the community, and I thought that actually ticks all the boxes. I like to be with people, I want to be with animals, I like helping people. So the first thing you have to do is pick their hooves to make sure they haven't got a loose shoe and they haven't got any injuries. So we look all over them before they get ready. Then when our riders come, we take the ponies into the school, into the arena, and then when they get mounted up and we take the lesson. For us at Digswell Place, it's been really important to be able to carry on volunteering because there's a lot of people who do need support out there.
I'm Jo and I've been a volunteer with the Redbourne Community Group now for 3.5 years and I work as a driver. I had some more time on my hands, realised they had a huge need for minibus drivers, something that I had experience of, so I applied and went ahead. It was just finding something that I thought I could actually contribute as part of a community effort, really. We go off on a weekly basis with the minibus, taking it round to households who aren't able to do the shopping themselves at the moment under the present conditions. So many people have been confined to their homes, unable to go out or even see anyone. You also get a chance to connect with them when you're dropping off their shopping, so they've had a chance to chat to someone as well. It's fabulous, and you just build these relationships with people you just never would have done before if you weren't doing voluntary work in the first place.
My name's Lisa and I'm a volunteer as a fosterer for guide dogs. Frankie's my first dog, so we've had him now for quite a few weeks. I wanted to volunteer because I can see the impact it has on people with visual impairment, and it fits into our lifestyle, our family, really well. Having Frankie has made us feel closer sometimes. We've had lots of times together and we've really, really enjoyed that. I believe volunteering is really rewarding, knowing the impact it will have on somebody's life. And I've learnt so much, and I also feel it's helped our family life as well.
I would definitely recommend volunteering to other people because of what you can actually get back from it yourself.
They really need people to volunteer so that we can accommodate everybody's needs.
It's just a lovely way of helping people, putting back into the community, and it's lovely that they are able to do that and we can help them.
Don't be afraid to step forward because there's a niche for everybody.
To use the classic line, it's massively rewarding.
It's a great way to get involved in your community.
Anyone that wants to volunteer, come and join us. Get out there, do your bit. We love it.
If you're thinking about getting involved, contact Team Hearts Volunteering and they'll be able to direct you and guide you to the right charity, the right group that suits you the best.
It was amazing to see all the incredible work that these volunteers do to support our community day in, day out. We hope you enjoyed our film and thank you so much to everyone who participated. If you'd like to get involved, you can contact us at info@thvolunteering.org.uk. We hope to hear from you soon.
Hello everyone, my name is Katie and I'm Project Manager of Team Hearts Volunteering, as you just saw in our wonderful video. Thank you so much to Councillor Richard Roberts, leader of Herts County Council, for his wonderful introduction, and thank you to you all for being here today. We hope you enjoy the rest of the conference, and I'm now going to hand over to Stephen Craker, who is CEO of Communities First.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for having me today. I'm about to start talking about the Community Help Hertfordshire Partnership, but before I do, if I just take a moment to tell you a little bit about our experience at Communities First. So, as Katie mentioned, my name is Steve Craker. I'm the Chief Executive of Communities First. We're a local centre for voluntary service, or CVS, a charity that supports other charities. We're also a volunteer centre and a community development agency for the districts of Herts, Mere and St Albans. As with lots of other voluntary organisations, a lot has changed for us over the last 12 months, and I'd like to share with you both ours and our partners' journey. Actually, it's been about 15 months now. So from previous experience of working in the NHS when swine flu took place some years ago, we understood that the community might need some support whilst going through this pandemic. At the time, we had no expectations of what the pandemic might look like, and definitely did not think it was going to end up the way it has done. So prior to the first lockdown, Communities First developed a Compassionate Community Connector programme, which is based on the Compassionate Neighbour programme, promoting and coordinating local people to help other local people. In the first week of the lockdown, two neighbouring organisations, which is Wren Hatfield CVS and Broxbourne and East Herts Volunteer Centre, asked to be part of this programme, so we worked in partnership to cover 50% of the county. Jack, could you change slides, please? Oops, that's one too many. That's it, thank you. So in the first 6 weeks, we had received 3,900 applications from volunteers or from individuals to volunteer, which is compared to an average of maybe 300 to 500 a year. So our collective volunteer centres have grown from 2.5 people to having over 110 people, individuals, helping us to check IDs, interview and reference check volunteers. We had district council staff seconded into our organisations, as well as existing volunteers and local businesses, all willing to support our recruitment drive. We supported local charities who are also responding to the pandemic to recruit and vet their volunteers and then passport them over to their organisations. At the same time, the county-funded Team Hearts volunteering programme also received around 5,000 volunteer interests and was busy handing these individuals over to voluntary organisations who needed that extra support and had the capacity to vet new individuals, for example, Hills and the Central Food Parcel Distribution Hub. During May and June, we started working with Hertfordshire County Council, the 2 CCGs, the NHS, and wider voluntary and community organisations to develop and deliver a consistent county-wide approach to support people shielding and self-isolating. It was at that point that Community Help Hertfordshire was formed and is being delivered in partnership with 8 Hertfordshire-based voluntary sector infrastructure organisation. The network also supports the fantastic efforts of local charities and communities helping each other, for example, mutual aid groups, food banks and good neighbourhood schemes. Over the past 15 months, both Team Hearts and Community Help Hertfordshire partners have recruited 11,170 volunteers, of which nearly 2,700 of them have been brokered over to local charities, so about 25%. Across the CHH partnership, we coordinate just over 2,200 volunteers each week. We've been supporting volunteers by delivering a range of training, including safeguarding, which was delivered in partnership with Hertfordshire Community Foundation, confidentiality, making every contact count in partnership with Hertfordshire County Council, dementia friends with over 300 new dementia friends, falls awareness, smoking cessation, hate crime reporting, etc. We've been able to provide access to qualified counsellors for volunteers who have struggled during the pandemic, as well as providing regular wellbeing checks and engagement events, both online with virtual coffee mornings and afternoon teas and quiz nights, and in-person events, particularly this week, celebrating Volunteers Week. Jack, if we could go on to the next slide, please. So our volunteers have been supporting local people with shopping, collecting prescriptions, urgent supplies, telephone befriending, telephone tech support, etc. In the first 3 months, Hearts Help and local charities and community navigators referred over 1,200 people to us. In these early weeks, we helped to distribute over 1,000 Easter eggs, thousands of donated bedding plants, children's storybooks, fresh bread to food banks, etc. Since March last year, the Community Help Hertfordshire Partnership has delivered over 95,000 tasks by volunteers. Nearly all of this work and many of these volunteers were not known to us just over a year ago. We now have over 3,600 people registered for support, with around 1,900 people being regularly supported. Next slide, please. Thank you. We now have an independent volunteer team who undertake telephone welfare checks and surveys with these individuals. And all of these volunteers have been trained to be able to have those conversations, and they're also checking the quality of service that these individuals are receiving. We've been working with all users to move them to be a codependent relationship towards independence, including walking buddies and shopper bus buddies, helping people to undertake their own shopping. In partnership with commissioners, we continue to develop and adapt the response to the various challenges that emerge and change as a result of the pandemic. For example, COVID Information Champions. Next slide, please. COVID Information Champions is actually being led by Community Development Action Hearts, CDA Hearts, and over the partnership, we've so far recruited over 300 Community Information Champions. That equates to having nearly 170,000 contacts across Hertfordshire who are receiving weekly COVID information releases via voluntary sector partners. I believe there's over 7,500 social media channel followers, and COVID Information Champions are actively messaging priority groups each week. We've also supported Dementia Digital Champions programme, which is being led by Community Action Decorum. And we've also supported the NHS in pulse oximetry deliveries. As mentioned earlier, next slide please. Communities First has also been supporting the NHS with vaccination volunteers. We've been working with a whole range of partners, including Team Hearts Volunteering, in recruiting those volunteers. We have around 4,800 individuals now volunteering at vaccination sites. And on Bank Holiday Monday, we reached 100,000 hours of volunteering across the 27 vaccination sites that we're supporting. All these volunteers are fully vetted and undertake 3 training courses, and we're supporting GP practices, pharmacies, and the mass vaccination sites. Volunteers have also supported GP practices, attending housebound patients, and special clinics for people with learning disabilities. And finally, my final slide is just a brief plug around the VCS Emergency Partnership. Many of the CHH partnership are part of this Emergencies Partnership, which is linked in to national volunteering organisations. It's a way of us being able to feedback what's going on locally, whether we've got enough volunteers, and working with those national organisations to support activities at a local level. My final few words would just be to thank all of the volunteers across Hertfordshire for what they've been able to do over these past 15 months in this very sort of difficult and challenging times. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for that extremely informative presentation and for really highlighting the invaluable role that Communities First has had during the pandemic, alongside the help of many partners within Hertfordshire. Thank you for presenting today. I'd now like to open it up to any Q&A anyone may have. Stephen has got to go after his presentation slot, so if anyone does have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A box, and Jack will be reading them out. There is an option if you'd like to ask anonymously, you can also do that. So please feel free to pop any questions you have for Stephen into the Q&A box now. Thanks. Okay, we'll just wait one more moment if there's any questions that come in, because they do take a moment to type up. So if there are any questions, alternatively, if you wanted to ask a question directly, you can raise your hand and us hosts will see if there's a raised hand and allow you to unmute yourself so you can ask a question. Okay, so I can see a raised hand from Una, so over to Una.
Hi, apologies because I've literally just joined. I was on another meeting. I just came in, I'm the Community Development Officer for Stevenage Borough Council, and I just came in just as you were talking about the COVID info champions. I think I got that right, so apologies if this isn't correct. I know that we are looking to make better contact with COVID champions in Stevenage and that. Where can I find out more about the COVID info champions? Because you said they actively message their communities weekly. I think that's correct. As I say, apologies, I have just sort of jumped into the meeting just as this came up, but it was of interest to me. If it's not something you can answer now, then that's fine. I can pick it up later. Thanks.
Yeah, no, I can. North Herts CVS will be the right organisation to contact. So hopefully Katie will be able to pass you on to the right person after this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we've got one question, Stephen. How easy do you think it's going to be to recruit volunteers going forward?
Actually, we're still receiving maybe 20 or 30 volunteer applications each week. So even though the economy started to open up and people are wanting to volunteer less often, people are still wanting to volunteer and give back to the community. So what we found, particularly with the vaccination centres, for example, back in sort of January, February, March, volunteering was really the only way that people could leave their homes. So they were wanting to volunteer sort of 5-6 times a week. As the economy has opened up and as the weather's got nicer, people still want to volunteer, but they are possibly only wanting to volunteer sort of once a week. So we do need more volunteers, and unfortunately we are seeing more volunteers stepping forward.
Brilliant. Well, next question we've got is, are Communities First running a befriending scheme? If you are, what is criteria for referral?
We're running a telephone befriending scheme, and there is no criteria for the referral, apart from the fact that somebody would like the service, and then they can either phone Hearts Help or phone us directly, and we can match them up with a suitable volunteer.
Super, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for your responses there, Stephen, and for clarifying those points for us. And thanks once again for presenting, and thank you for being here today. So now I'm going to hand over to our next panelist, which is Jackie Scully. Jackie is a multi-award winning strategist, business leader and philanthropist, and Jackie is going to share her incredible volunteering story and the value of volunteering to volunteers as well. So over to you, Jackie, and thank you again for being here today.
No worries, and thank you for the introduction. It's a real privilege to be here today virtually to talk about the transformative power of volunteering and how we, all of us, through our actions, can change lives for the better. As Katie said, my name's Jackie, and in my day job, I'm the executive director of a content marketing agency called Think. We help not-for-profits, charities, and professional membership organisations strike up meaningful conversations with their key supporter and member audiences. I guess I like to call myself a bit of a professional with a purpose. When I'm not giving to the organisations I support in my day job, I'm giving back, doing my bit, volunteering my time, my energy, and my skills to help the world become a little bit brighter. I guess it hasn't always been that way. And I've always been one of life's givers. The very first club I set up was a help club when I was 7 with a 20p membership fee. And while it wasn't particularly helpful, I knew from an early age that I wanted to do something that made an impact. I was always the first to set up overly complicated charity fundraisers, one of which included creating a line of pennies stretching the entire length of my secondary school. And I remember being put in charge of the Arts Week at university, only to turn it into a fundraiser for the local hospice. But as the busyness of life has crept in, giving has taken a little bit of a backseat. I was ambitious, so I gave everything to my work. I had all of the passion and none of the purpose. And then, just 3 weeks after my boyfriend of 13 years to propose to me, on January the 17th, 2014, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer, and I was just 32. Now, if there's no genetic connection, you get to make up your own reasons why life decided to hand you a serious illness at 32. And bearing in mind life handed it to someone who'd spent most of her 20s learning to walk again due to hip problems, it was a difficult diagnosis to accept. The reason I came up with was that I was so busy rushing through my life that I'd forgotten what it was to live. Success was measured in the hours worked, the wards lining up on the shelves, and the money earned, not the lives I changed. Happiness was a good day in the office, a day that would leave me little time to support others. And I remembered birthdays, but I was never present enough to turn up. I was trying to be a giver, but I was completely missing the mark. I thought I was successful, but I was wrong. I cannot tell you how sobering it is to look in the mirror at such a young age and not really like or admire the woman staring back. But that diagnosis has forced me to see that while I had been so busy chasing one version of success, I had failed to see that a life without meaning, purpose, and kindness is no life at all. Success isn't so much what you achieve in your life, it's why. It wasn't the diagnosis day that that changed me. It was the day the nurse caring for me after my mastectomy forced me to take a long, hard look in the mirror that did. As I was reaching around for my then BlackBerry, she turned to me and she said, "Jackie, are you doing something every day you'd be proud to put on your gravestone?" The answer, of course, was no. At the time, having had life-saving surgery, I was stunned, but it's a question that is now so embedded with me that I've even got it engraved on a keyring I carry with me each and every day. That conversation made sure I didn't count the end of the days until the end of active treatment, but I made every day count. You know, inspiration was all around me. While there were lots of memories from that treatment year, from needles to chemo drugs, that I have let fade, there are so many I want to cling on to forever, and they all contain volunteers. Kind strangers, people going out of their way to change the course of my day, from the hospital volunteer who'd slip my mum some hot tea so she could make black tea, to the charity supporters providing their time and their advice so that I could find my way from the darkness towards the light. Volunteers provided the spring in my step I couldn't find for myself. And I wanted so desperately to be one of them. So when I eventually got out of that hospital bed, I made a conscious decision to change not just my life, but the lives of those around me. Just weeks after leaving hospital, I started volunteering, raising awareness of breast cancer in younger women, working with my MP to put the disease on the political agenda, speaking at events, fundraising, writing about my experiences to support others facing life-changing decisions. I did my first breast cancer awareness week just days after my first chemo session with no hair and a terrible bout of nausea. I've cheered marathon runners. I have stood in front of 500 less than sober fans at the British Grand Prix and 7,000 festival revelers in a muddy field and encouraged people to part with their cash. I've sold raffle tickets at big balls. I've run a political hustings to challenge local candidates on their thoughts around improving care for breast cancer patients. I've sat next to Eamon Holmes on TV, the only person I've met to share a name with my dad, to talk about the links between exercise and cancer. And I even took part in the world's most sedentary filmed exercise class to get people, help people recovering from surgery. Volunteering made me feel alive when cancer was trying to do anything but. Now, there's one memory that stands out for me that year, and it was the evening I was doing my first ever bucket collection at London Bridge Tube Station. I always wanted to try a bucket collection, but I realised quite quickly that shaking a bucket in a bright pink t-shirt and trying to stay motivated as commuters rushed by, took the longer route, avoided eye contact, was really, really hard. As I was about to give up hope with my pitiful collection, a big issue seller came up to me, and while my back was turned, he emptied the contents of his pocket, all the money that he had, into my bucket. His generosity wiped away all the disappointment and humiliation I had experienced in the previous 75 minutes. I was overwhelmed by his selflessness. Another volunteer, just trying to make a difference. Every day now when I actually leave the house, thank you pandemic, I carry a pot of change just for charity bucket collectors, because I know how hard that job is. Looking back, I like to think that 2014 wasn't really the year I nearly died. It was the year I discovered how to live, that the world is a beautiful place if you know where to look, and that when the currency is kindness, we are all millionaires. Volunteering made that possible. Now, a big part of the volunteering I did and have done since is focused on fundraising. Having had my hip rebuilt in my 20s, my left leg is full of metal as a result. When cancer came along, I decided I wouldn't let my body define me. So I chose the hardest thing I could think of. I put on my old tatty trainers when I was going through chemotherapy. I took my bald head, metal hip, reconstructed breast and super glued stomach for a run. My leg was not rebuilt so I could run on it, but that didn't stop me. And I ran my first 10K before my last chemo, and I've never looked back. Speaking before you today, I am not just a professional with a purpose. I am a marathon runner, much to my hip surgeon's surprise. And in fact, in 2017, my husband and I became the first couple in the world to get married on the Cutty Sark Clipper in Greenwich before running the London Marathon on the same day. We also trekked the Great Wall of China for our honeymoon and raised nearly £30,000 for charity in the process. When I look back over those last 7 years, however, I don't think about the smash fundraising targets or the political breakthroughs. I think about the woman who saw me running a marathon on my wedding day and decided to get out of a wheelchair and walk for the first time in a year. Her daughter wrote to me and told me I'd given her a hope she couldn't write for herself and a confidence to believe that she could get up and change her life. I will never forget her letter. That, for me, is success. Achievement with purpose. I thought I didn't have time to volunteer. Now I made time. Sometimes the last thing I can feel like after a long day of work is writing a charity blog or drumming up support or cash for a volunteering event. But I can guarantee it's the meaningful and purpose-driven acts that feature most in the gratitude diary I write every night. I live to give. I'm not quite the volunteer I was in 2014. I've learned to play to my strengths and use the skills I feel will best benefit the charities and organisations that I support. I have more structured roles. I'm now a trustee for a mental health and exercise charity, Mintridge. And having studied the art of generosity even, I have more structured giving plans as a result. I have a pot of money for regular giving, another one for spontaneous giving, and one to support those closest to me. But I still make sure I have time to say yes when other volunteering opportunities come along. And I always have a big fundraising idea bubbling away in the background. Volunteering has given me so much. There is no greater feeling than the feeling that comes from knowing that you are helping someone take a step towards a brighter life. A day with volunteering in it is always a good day. Over the last 7 years, volunteering has helped me step out of my comfort zone, build confidence, develop skills I never even knew I had, and greet each day with a smile. Beautiful, purposeful individuals I've met along the way, some of the greatest people I could ever hope to meet. And knowing just how important having a little bit of meaning woven into the fabric of every day is one of the greatest lessons I have ever learned. And it is a lesson I want to share with the world. And I know I'm not alone. The power of volunteering is working its way all across Hertfordshire. It was wonderful to read the results of the volunteering survey conducted back in February that shows just how much volunteering means to each and every one of your incredible volunteers. Everyone wants to make a difference, of course, to support the community, to help the county respond positively to the challenges of a global pandemic. But they also recognise that the very act of volunteering itself is such an incredible boost for so many, providing social contact, helping new friendships form, supporting mental health and well-being, and giving people the opportunity to find purpose. It has provided a route out of loneliness. For those unable to work during the pandemic, it has been a genuine lifeline. I like to think that when it comes to volunteering, everyone has something unique to contribute. We all belong. It was humbling to read the success stories on the Team Hearts volunteering website, to learn just how many amazing people there are across Hertfordshire, and we saw them on the video, doing their bit to make each day that little bit more beautiful. From walking leaders and drivers and phone support volunteers to those providing refugees with vital language skills via Zoom and vaccine stewards. Your wonderful Hertfordshire volunteers make things possible. By gifting their time, skills, energy, and kindness, they are turning great ideas into impact and action. They aren't just changing lives, they're saving them too. And I love the fact that they're also helping each other and themselves in the process. Volunteers make the world a better place, and it is a privilege to be talking to you today to thank you for the role you play in their work. Thank you for your compassionate words. Thank you for your helping hands. And thank you for your supporting smiles. I know I wouldn't be a volunteer now if it hadn't been for people in your position. Thank you for helping others find the sunshine through the clouds. Even the smallest of gestures can make the biggest of marks on the people you support. You too are all connectors, bringing the community together every single day and helping volunteers find their voice. Thank you for helping others give back so that other people can move forward. I can guarantee there are people smiling a smile that you gave them. People like you are the reason I will never stop volunteering. I will keep listening, I will keep supporting, I will keep fundraising and campaigning and being there for others. So what's next for me? Well, 6 months today is my 40th birthday, an age I never thought I'd see. To celebrate, I'm organising a big birthday fundraiser, and in the 40 days leading up to my December birthday, I will be encouraging as many people as possible to exercise and contribute kilometres to a 40,000 kilometre total, the equivalent of one trip round the globe, to raise £40,000 for charity. And on the last day, my actual birthday, I'm going to attempt to break the Guinness World Record for the longest static cycling class in the world. The record stands at 28 hours of continuous static cycling. We are going for 29. Monday will mark the start of my search for another 24 people ready to help me make this one of the sweatiest 40th birthday parties I could ever imagine. And when it gets really hard, and I hope that won't be at hour 2, I will be thinking of not just the people this challenge can help, but of people like you, helping volunteers spread kindness and find hope for themselves each and every day. Thank you for all that you do and all that you are.
Thank you so very much, Jackie, for your amazing contribution. Just incredibly moving, but also amazingly inspiring as well. And I hope everyone here took something away from your amazing story. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open it up to Q&A as I did before. So please use the Q&A function if you have any questions at all for Jackie, and also you can use the raise hand function. I hope that your search for 24 volunteers can be enabled by everyone here today, as we've got 32 people, 32 attendees. So how can people, I'll start off, how can people get in touch and get involved if they like the sound of your 40th birthday challenge, Jackie?
So I'm announcing everything on social media, so via Instagram, Twitter and LinkedIn and Facebook on Monday. And I am also going to my first static spin class in a very long time as well. We are, one of Mintridge are setting up a register your interest page, and I'm just looking for people that are committed to the idea of getting sweaty for 29 hours and fundraising also. The good news is you get a rest of 5 minutes per hour. So you're not having to be on a bike for the whole 29 hours, but I have been told I'm about to get a very sore bottom. But yes, I'm looking for people to join me, and yeah, I want it to be a great party, and there's nothing like a group of volunteers to get a party started.
Incredible. I love the sound of that. So if you wanted to pop any links or anything in the chat, just make sure you send it to all panelists and all attendees, then people can see there how they can get involved. Lovely. So I'll open it up to any questions anyone may have now, and over to Jack. Feel free to raise hands as well if you've got any comments about anything that Jackie shared, or you'd like to thank Jackie for her contribution today. Anything you'd like to contribute. Oh, we've got something coming up in the chat, so I'll hand over.
That was brilliant, Jackie. And we've just got a message in the Q&A from Kate, who just really wants to thank you for your story, and it was incredibly moving and motivational, and best wishes for your birthday challenge.
Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you. I think the one other thing I didn't really say was, you know, I think the things I've learned about being a volunteer is that, you know, I know that a lady who invited me onto this, she knows this all too well, is that, it's so good when you find a volunteer where you know what their strengths are and you play to those strengths. And I think that for me, the more I've worked with many organizations, probably 8 or 9 different charities and things, and it's the ones that I gravitate towards are the ones that know how to get the best out of me. And I think that is something that's so important when it comes to the volunteer community, and putting we people definitely don't put me shaking a bucket, but that's what I've learned. But no, it's all good.
Yeah, we've got just plenty of good messages in the Q&A. I've just got a little personal one. Because you've done so much volunteering over your time, when you were looking for volunteering opportunities, where were you looking? Were you looking for the causes, or when you were looking, where did you go?
I guess I'm sort of lucky in some ways and unlucky in others. The cause sort of came up and banged me on the head and sort of pointed me in the right direction. But I think I stayed true to my values, and the charities that I support are ones where they look at quality of life, support for other people, helping people overcome their whatever problems it is. So I work with a number of different charities, from the Willow Foundation to Copperfield to Mint, which, as I say, as a trustee, and I go for smaller charities where I can make a bigger difference, and I look for opportunities. So I remember when I was going through treatment, I was trying to apply for some where I had to go through an application scheme and a review process. And, you know, there were lots and lots and lots and lots of stages. And then at the end of it, you know, they never really got to know the person. And I think I'm more, you know, where it's small and where I can make a difference, and where people I can kind of use my energy, I guess that's where I like to go for volunteering opportunities. But I look online, and I also love the fact that many volunteering opportunities now aren't just about using your working day. You can do lots of stuff around your time, and also provide your professional skills as well. And I'm always looking for opportunities to use my professional skills in a way that really benefits people. So yeah, I think flexibility in volunteering, particularly for young people, is incredibly important, and something I've definitely benefited from.
That's brilliant, thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. And Jackie, you'll be able to see all the messages of support and good luck wishes within the chat function there. So thank you once again for your wonderful contribution. And I'm now going to introduce our next panelist. So our next speaker for today is Chris Reed, and Chris is the Director of Volunteer Mobilisation at the British Red Cross. Chris is going to be speaking about their journey through the pandemic and the opportunities that the pandemic has provided for volunteer involving organisations. So over to you, Chris.
Fantastic, thank you. And can I just check the screen shares worked okay?
Yep.
Great stuff, thank you. I'm not quite sure how to follow Jackie there. That was absolutely fantastic. And it's a constant challenge in a role like mine to always be upstaged by our volunteers. But I would much rather that happen, because actually hearing from volunteers themselves, in my view, is always far more important than the staff behind the scenes that hopefully enable a fantastic volunteering experience. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about what we've been up to at British Red Cross over the past sort of 14-15 months in relation to the COVID pandemic, and also draw in a little bit as well about the international movement of the Red Cross, Red Crescent, as British Red Cross is one of 192 national societies, Red Cross or Red Crescent, that exist in almost every country of the world. And as an emergency response organisation, clearly the pandemic has played a very, very important role in what we've been doing globally over the past year or so. But one of the things that we've really found in a UK context is that the pandemic's really kind of turbocharged some of the changes that we were already beginning to make in volunteering, not just across the movement, but in particular within the British Red Cross. And some of these, I'm sure, will resonate with organisations in Hertfordshire as well. We'd already seen from the surveys that the likes of the National Council for Voluntary Organisations and others had done, that there was an increasing desire for people to be able to get involved in more kind of one-off volunteering opportunities that they could dip in and out of, not needing the sort of the long training programs and sort of selection processes actually that Jackie just referred to towards the end of the Q&A there. And we'd done quite a bit of work back in 2018 to sort of talk to our volunteers about what they thought of volunteering for us, and this is one of the quotes that really resonated with me in terms of people wanting to ensure that volunteering felt far less like a job in terms of the sort of the recruitment and selection processes, the training processes that large scale organisations like British Red Cross were often putting people through. So we began a process of starting to sort of reimagine volunteering and what that might look like for us, thinking not just about the sort of the regular formal volunteering that traditionally people had done for our organisation, but thinking about kind of more lighter touch ways that people could engage where they didn't have to commit as much time, but also thinking about how we might be able to enable communities and individuals to support themselves. And during the course of the pandemic, these two areas of light touch and micro volunteering have really been ones that have kind of come to the forefront, both for us and also kind of across the globe, actually, in terms of looking at what's been going on from a wider perspective. We saw the real advent of mutual aid groups across the UK in particular, the use of social media as a means to coordinate local food banks that maybe sprang up at the start of COVID as people were on furlough, and the use of Facebook groups and other things to be able to coordinate community level action. And so what we were seeing, bearing in mind this is an emergency response space, was a real kind of a colliding of sort of the formal structured volunteering that we traditionally offered through the likes of the Red Cross and indeed other organisations, and informal volunteering very much kind of coming together in the COVID space. Arguably a lot of that had existed pre-COVID, but COVID really kind of brought it to people's attention much more. And so as a result, going back to my point earlier about kind of turbocharging change, the pandemic's really changed not only what we do, but how we do it in terms of the British Red Cross. And I'll come to the kind of the what we do in a moment. And apologies in advance, because this is a very, very noisy, complicated slide. But what this is designed to highlight is the fact that what we did at the start of the pandemic in British Red Cross is we rolled out a new platform for managing our volunteers, a platform that we'd anticipated was going to take about 6 months, and did that in the space of 6 weeks, in part because the whole organisation had sort of pivoted around our response to the pandemic, and that enabled us to redeploy significant numbers of our volunteers who, for a whole range of reasons, weren't able to volunteer. So we had to close our 350 charity shops almost overnight, and so we had an available workforce there of around about 7,000 volunteers who were keen to continue to do something to support the Red Cross, but we needed to facilitate to be able to get into different volunteering roles. So rolling out that system enabled us to do that. It enabled us to do that in record time as well in terms of those redeployments, and was a really important part of facilitating not only our early response to the pandemic, but also work we're now doing in the vaccination space, and other really important areas as well. But not all of what we did was about systems. Recognising with the closure of shops, a lot of our staff went onto furlough. We recognised quite early on that we needed to continue to find ways of providing support to our volunteers that where they weren't able to get in touch with their line managers because they were furloughed, or we'd redeployed them to something new. So we set up a national volunteer support line so that there was somewhere for all of our volunteers to be able to go should they need any support at any time. And that was a service that was proactively making contact with volunteers. For the first time, we were logging if our volunteers went off sick in terms of whether they were impacted by COVID or indeed they were having to shield and weren't able to volunteer. So we could make sure that we maintain their well-being throughout the time. And to date, the volunteer support lines had just shy of 19,000 engagements with our volunteers. So a really important thing that we put in place. And a shameless plug now, because we've actually had the support line nominated for a Make a Difference award. We'll be sharing the slides after today. So if you have the opportunity to vote, that would be absolutely fantastic. But what the pandemic also did was change who we were working with as well. As I'll go on to in a moment, we received a significant increase in people wanting to come forward to volunteer with us. Not all of whom we could necessarily utilise, but actually what we were able to do through partnerships with organisations like FareShare is actually redeploy our volunteers to them when they needed additional capacity. And Stephen mentioned earlier the Voluntary and Community Sector Emergencies Partnership. That's an initiative that we co-chair with NAVCA, the National Association for Voluntary and Community Action, and that was something that was established on the back of the various terror attacks and the Grenfell Tower fire in 2017, really recognising that for us as a large national organisation, we are not always the experts in local communities, but we have a set of skills and expertise and resource that quite often can really benefit local communities if harnessed and deployed appropriately. So what the VCSEP does is it connects the likes of ourselves, St John Ambulance, Royal Voluntary Service, with local community groups. So where there is an unmet need, we're able to provide targeted support to help. That's not to say we replace local community initiatives, but not every county in the country has an initiative like Team Hearts that's able to really facilitate the kind of the community action that you do in Hertfordshire. So we can come in and provide that additional support where that's needed, connecting up with local organisations. What we've also seen is a huge increase, as I mentioned, in the numbers of people that want to work with us. And that initially was a real challenge, and it's been a challenge for us. It's been a challenge for initiatives like the NHS Responders, where initially they were seeking around about 250,000 volunteers. They ended up with 750,000, but they didn't necessarily have enough for them to do. Our Light Touch volunteering initiative that we had even before COVID was our Community Reserve Volunteer Programme, where people could sign up and then just be called out as and when they might be needed. And pre-COVID, we had around about 6,000 to 8,000 people on our books. To date, that now stands at 93,000. Many of those actually we've been able to deploy, but not all of them. But also, as I said, we've looked more creatively at how we've deployed working with other organisations as well. But nevertheless, it's been a very, very busy sort of 18 months for us. And at the end of last year, we'd totted up and we'd worked out that we'd responded in some way to some sort of an emergency pretty much every single day of the year. On a pre sort of COVID, we average responding to an incident in the UK every 4 hours across the UK, whether that's a house fire, a flood, or something like that. And none of those sorts of things went away, but what we did see was needs, as Stephen articulated earlier, that were emerging that meant that we were responding to things that we'd not necessarily responded to before. And one of the things that we got very heavily involved in early on was around food deliveries and medicine deliveries. We didn't have a food distribution infrastructure at the Red Cross, yet we were able to redeploy some of our activities and have since the start of the pandemic delivered over 100,000 food parcels, supplementing the work that already goes on at a local level with various food banks, etc. But one of the biggest things that we found, and this is a reflection, I think, of the kind of the online world that we're operating in, actually it was our community education resources that we were able to provide online that really seemed to resonate with people, with over 1.7 million people downloading and making use of those resources. And a lot of this work still hasn't gone away. We're beginning to get back to some form of business as usual, but we're still doing vaccinations, and we're not kind of fully in that recovery space yet. But globally, we've continued to respond to an awful lot beyond just the pandemic. But we've had to do that with the pandemic kind of at our door all of the time. And just to give you a bit of a kind of a summary of some of the things that the whole movement's been involved in, and recognising the contribution of our volunteers, I've just got a very short film now which will kind of summarise what our 13 million volunteers globally have been involved in far better than I possibly can.
UK scientists are saying the bushfires in Australia are a warning of what may be to come around the world.
Day after day, fire crews brave the front lines in a crisis that's still escalating.
In central China, a man has died following an outbreak of an unknown pneumonia-like virus. Health authorities say that only 40 other people.
The death toll from the outbreak of coronavirus in Italy has surged by 919 in a single day.
In my local branch, we're working tirelessly to support our local community, people vulnerable, isolated or sick.
Cyclone Amphan uprooted trees, brought down electricity and telephone lines and flattened houses in the western states of West Bengal and Odessa and southwest Bangladesh. Blast which shook the entire city began with a fire at a warehouse which housed thousands of tons of ammonium nitrate.
Homes were abandoned as water from the Nile flowed over. The result of a rise in the river's level, the highest in more than 100 years.
Typhoon Goni hit the province of Albay for only a few hours, but the devastation it left behind is beyond comprehension.
Following a powerful earthquake in the east of the country, it was followed by dozens of aftershocks. Rescue teams are now searching for survivors trapped in collapsed buildings.
So very much a year like no other, and while I can't speak as eloquently as Jackie did from a volunteering perspective, I mean, hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour. But now we're beginning to kind of think about, okay, so how do we move into a kind of a post-pandemic world? We're going through a process of looking at how we can ensure that we bring our volunteers back to volunteering safely where they've had to pause. And again, kind of our fantastic volunteer support line has been going through a process of contacting all those volunteers that have been isolating or shielding, ensuring that we can bring them back to their volunteering safely. But also we importantly need to take into account what we've seen in terms of the changes in volunteering. And while kind of pre-COVID, volunteering quite often tended to be thought about in terms of these 4 categories, and occasionally people would think about, well, there might be some sort of more sporadic, lighter touch volunteering and sometimes some more regular formal stuff. What we've seen through some of the work that the International Federation of the Red Cross and indeed United Nations volunteers have been doing, that actually what COVID has shown us is that volunteering is far more complex than that. Actually, it's not just a distinction about formal versus informal, and sort of informal being online and episodic. Actually, the formal volunteering can be like that as well. If you look at the likes of the NHS Responders scheme, where they are quite formal volunteering roles, but actually are very much kind of facilitated online. They're episodic, and they may be more sometimes about individuals than communities and organisations. It's how we think about how we embrace that as organisations that involve volunteers, how we ensure that our volunteering models are flexible and respond to what people really want going forward. So there's more work for us to do in terms of British Red Cross finishing off a lot of the systems improvements that we rolled out, thinking about our strategy for the future, how we make sure that we're accessible, and how we make sure that we're significantly more targeted in our efforts in order that we can support the genuinely most vulnerable in the communities. So that's a bit of a flavour of things from a slightly broader perspective. And I think I'm handing back to Katie now at this point. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for both your presentation, Chris, and for sharing that wonderful video as well. I think as professionals in the voluntary community and social enterprise sector, we're often really, really busy about thinking what we're doing on a local level, that we forget that it's being mirrored on a national and also an international level. So it was really, really interesting to hear about your journey and the takeaways you have found from the pandemic. And again, just to reiterate, a huge thank you to all of the amazing volunteers that are doing their part and to all of the organisations that are supporting them. So thank you so much for sharing with us today. I'm now going to open, as I have for previous panelists, open it up to Q&A. So if anyone wanted to ask Chris any questions about anything he's just presented on, or any questions you may have, please pop them in the Q&A box, or alternatively, you can raise your hand and ask Chris the question directly. So any questions? So I'm sure everyone can see on the Q&A section, Stuart from Crossroads just wanted to say thank you for another fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for your time. Brilliant speakers on today and really appreciated. So that's from Stuart.
So we've got one from one question here. So the slide about episodic volunteering was interesting, and the wheel. Could we see it again?
I think I can make that work. Just bear with me a second. There we go. Has that appeared for everybody?
Yes.
Yep, that's
Fantastic. Yeah, there's quite a complex research report that that sits behind this. So I'm very much oversimplifying what a lot of quite learned colleagues, or at least far more learned than me, have gone into in terms of pulling this together. I think that one of the the key takeaways for, well, actually I think there's two key takeaways for this. One is the fact that, as I said, that the kind of the nature of volunteering, that previous assumption that everything informal was online, everything informal was episodic, and everything formal was a kind of in-person, more regular commitment, is something that actually probably you will have seen more of at a local level in terms of I know from my experience of having worked in a volunteer centre previously, actually we recognised that volunteering wasn't always kind of as sort of black and white as that. But what you might have noticed in the kind of the outer ring of the circle, it still reflects the sort of categorisation that we used to look at volunteering in, that adds a category called leisure, or what sometimes is referred to as serious leisure. Which recognises that actually sometimes people purely do get involved in volunteering for fun. And that's not to say that general participation or campaigning or what have you isn't fun, but in terms of the motivations, sometimes the desire to go out and do a I don't know, a national trust project or something like that you can do as a family is quite often an opportunity where people will say, well, actually, I'm not going out volunteering, I'm going out doing something with the family. And so it's seen as more of a leisure opportunity. So it's kind of recognising that volunteering is far more complex, perhaps, than we've perhaps looked at it in the past.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for that explanation, and hopefully that's helped the person who asked the question to understand and gain a bit more context there. So just one last comment in the Q&A, just to say thank you everyone, fantastic and informative presentations. So thank you once again, Chris, for giving us your time today and for presenting. Thank you so much. Okay, now I'm just going to speak a little bit about Team Hearts volunteering. I don't know if you're all aware, everyone here today, that Team Hearts Volunteering was actually established in 2015, and it was to be a one-stop hub for volunteering in Hertfordshire. Team Hearts Volunteering is one of the projects of North Herts Centre for Voluntary Service, and we're funded by Herts County Council in order to deliver this service. So we not only help everyday people to begin their volunteering journey by equipping them with the knowledge needed to start to find a fulfilling volunteer role, but we also support voluntary, community and social enterprise organisations in the recruitment, retention and celebration of volunteers. And essentially that's all about what this Volunteers Week is about, is celebrating those fantastic volunteers and also the voluntary organisations that they operate within. So a little bit about what's coming up for Team Hearts Volunteering. So at present, we are currently recruiting some volunteers to take on board within the team, and that will help us to develop the services that we provide to both organisations and to prospective volunteers across Hertfordshire. We're also developing our very own volunteer platform, and again we hope that will simplify the process of volunteer recruitment for the organisations that we support. So really exciting times with that, and there'll be more to come on that in the coming weeks, so do keep an eye out. We've also just established a really exciting partnership with the Young Trustees Movement, and we have partnered with them to pilot a new programme to encourage a wider cross-section of people to become trustees and to join the boards of charities, which I know is really difficult to diversify that representation. So we're really excited to take this on. Our CEO of the CVS, Hannah Morgan-Gray, is going to be being trained to then train other voluntary sector organisations to encourage diversification of boards. So that's really exciting. And again, do keep an eye on our social media because we'll be talking about that more very soon. Also at Team Hearts Volunteering, we're always keen for feedback and to develop our offer. So we're soon going to launch a steering group which will be re-established. It did stop during COVID just to, as there were more pressing issues to attend to. But the steering group really is a collection of voluntary sector professionals, and we want to hear your input. We want to hear what you want to see from Team Hearts Volunteering. So if anyone here today is interested in being on our steering group, please do reach out. We'd love to hear from you. And I just wanted to say thank you so much to everyone for being here today. We actually premiered our film, our volunteer celebration film today, and that will be going out on our social media platforms after this conference. So we really appreciate everyone here today sharing that as far as and wide as possible, and because we really do want to shout about the fantastic volunteers across Hertfordshire and celebrate and thank them. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to open the floor to any questions anyone may have. So if you have any questions for any of the panelists that were here today, you wanted to share a comment or you wanted to raise your hand and say something, then please do feel free to. There is a time allocation for some Q&A now. So anything you have to say, please do feel free to share. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. We've just got one comment so far. Just wanted to comment that this has been fantastic and inspiring. It's comforting to know how we are surrounded by so many good people, and that support and celebration for those people is there. So thank you for that. I'll turn my video on so it's not a random person speaking for a black screen to make it a little bit more open.
Okay, I think then if no one has any additional questions or comments, I'd just like to say thank you so very much to all of our panelists today. Thank you so much for sharing your inspiring words. Thank you for highlighting the amazing partnerships we have in Hertfordshire and how lucky we are to have such an engaged voluntary community social enterprise sector, and how many passionate individuals there are around. It's been really, really inspiring, and we hope everyone's taken something away from this, and we look forward to sharing this far and wide so that other people can benefit from this session today. Just again to say, please do share our Volunteers Week celebration video, as it's a lovely film and we really want as many people to see it as possible. Last few comments. Thank you for a really interesting conference, very inspirational. Thank you to all panelists. And someone's asked, will the slides be available after today? Yeah, absolutely. All of the people we emailed out to invite to the conference today will receive the slides. And obviously, if you wanted to request on behalf of anyone who wasn't able to attend, do just send us an email and we can arrange that. No worries. Okay, thank you so much once again for everyone being here, and I hope you enjoy your weekends, and take care everyone. Thank you.